the cars after the nanotech has destroyed everything. So are we ready?
Go, Jeff.
They ran beneath the twisted metal bulk of the truck breaker. Cam and Newcomb had their guns drawn, but Ruth needed her good arm to crawl into the wreckage, suddenly half blind out of the sun. Her glove crunched in a litter of glass and plastic. What, she said, but then she felt it too, a low, menacing drumbeat. Helicopters, again. In the vast ruins of what had been Sacramento, California, there were no longer any sounds except the wind and the river and sometimes the bugs. It was a small advantage. So far, they'd always heard the choppers while they were still tens of miles away. There was a culvert about a quarter mile behind us, Ruth said, her mind jumping. Newcomb grunted. I saw it. Too far. Cam lifted one glove to the inhuman shape of his goggles and hood. Ants, he said. Ruth turned to see, but cracked her head in the tight space. The crumpled bulk of the trailer read Safeway in letters as long as her body, and she said quietly, "It's a grocery truck." Christ. Newcomb scuffled back toward the sunlight, moving on his elbows to keep his rifle out of the grit and dust. She realized there was another noise all around them, creeping and soft. The dead had begun to live again. The bones and the garbage vibrated in the helicopter's rising thunder, rattling, sighing. Go, Cam said, just as Newcomb hissed, "Stay back." Ruth shifted urgently. She had to move, even if there was nowhere to go. She had seen ant swarms in the heart of the city like impossible black floods, surging over ceilings and walls, stripping entire buildings of carpet glue, rubber, and upholstery. "We need to get out of here," she said. "Go," Cam agreed. Ruth tried to ease past him, shoving herself between the broken asphalt and the white and red bulk of the trailer. Then she saw two tendrils of ants. The choppers slammed across their position, overwhelming her pulse and her mind. Everything in her shook. Everything was noise. Ruth thought to scream, but then the thunder tipped away, sliding by like a falling building or a train. And Newcomb grabbed her arm. "God damn it, stay back," he yelled. "They might not be sure. They might only be following the highway." Ruth made herself nod. She couldn't breathe. She tried to look out, but when the truck rolled, it had hit at least one other vehicle. There was a badly dented beige sedan in front of her, and yet the noise was still a solid thing and easy to follow. It hadn't gone far. "They're landing," she said. There were open fields on this side of the highway, an irregular stretch of flat brown earth where the commercial buildings stopped short of the road. Cam pushed in beside her, craning his neck to see. Ants covered his shoulder. "We can't make our stand here," he told Newcomb. "The bugs," Ruth said. "Get the bugs between us and them." "Yeah, move." Newcomb rolled over and began to pull off his pack. Ruth turned and scrambled away, looking for Cam as soon as she hit daylight. He came out slapping at one sleeve, and they ducked into the motionless cars together. The glinting she had seen, sunlight on air tanks and weaponry. Were there 10 soldiers? 20? "Here, stop." Cam pulled at her, and they circled behind a white Mercedes. "If they come up the embankment, we can try to force them back towards the truck," he said. Ruth nodded, dry-mouthed. Where was Newcomb? Waiting, she became intensely aware of her exhaustion, old bruises, new hurts. Waiting, she drew her pistol. In another life, this much pain would have stopped her already, but she was not who she had been. None of them were, and that was both good and bad. In many ways, Ruth Goldman was less complicated now, thinking less, feeling more, and there was real strength in her anger and frustration and shame. She owed it to her friends to fight. She owed it to herself for every mistake she'd made. Panting through the bitter taste of her face mask, Ruth kicked aside the small, partially melted ribcage of a child to reach the car's rear bumper, where she brought her pistol up and braced for the assault. It just gets scarier.